I've noticed that certain aspects of the mainstream queer narrative apply a lot of unnecessary pressure onto closeted people. And instead of uplifting and empowering those of us who are working towards coming out, this perspective actually disempowers and creates additional challenge for the closeted members of our community. So, in this conversation, I want to talk about how and why you being in the closet might actually be a good thing. But first, let's talk about some of the unhelpful and even harmful emotions that are often associated with being in the closet. And these are feelings such as shame, embarrassment, feeling like a failure or a coward, or feeling weak and afraid, and possibly just defeated in general. And so, if you're feeling your own version of these emotions, then I want to be the first to tell you that all of this is normal and it's okay. And even though, yes, some of these emotions might be messages from your intuition and they might be signals from your body letting you know that it's time for change, still, regardless, there is a really good chance that a lot of these difficult emotions aren't actually yours. And what I mean by that is that they aren't authentically associated with your closeted situation, but instead, they are in response to this subtle queer narrative, which positions the closeted person as in a bad situation, and then the out person as in a good situation. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you're familiar with this generic queer storyline, which implies that being in the closet is not actually where you're supposed to be, and that if you are in the closet, well, then as soon as you get your act together, you will make the correct choice, which is, of course, to come out of the closet. Because that's where all queer people are supposed to be, right? Supposed to be loud and proud and totally open about their queer identity. And, well, anyone who isn't quite there yet simply hasn't grown enough, or they're not mature or confident or strong enough. Now, of course, none of this is actually explicitly spelled out in this queer storyline, and it's definitely not an intentional thing. But if you happen to be a sensitive person, I'm pretty sure that you're going to be picking up on some of these implied subliminal messaging, which comes through as a byproduct of this traditional queer narrative, which places the closeted person as in the undesirable situation and then glorifies the coming out process and celebrates the person who is strong enough to speak their truth. And then, of course, when you, the closeted person, senses that message that being in the closet is not actually where you're supposed to be, what happens? Well, you feel shame about your situation and you get down on yourself. Or in other words, you look to yourself as the problem, right? So if only you could just be stronger or more proud of your queer identity, if only you could be better, then you would be out of the closet. But of course, this internalization of a generic narrative, which is totally removed from your individual situation, well, it only makes things worse, right? And it just creates more pressure, more anxiety, and more doubt. And now, in addition to everything else that you've got going on, now you also have to carry the weight of a disempowering storyline, which positions you as being not where you're supposed to be. And so that right there, that is the subtle dynamic that I want to address in this conversation. That self-harming tendency to compare the highly nuanced reality of your life to this generic fairy tale queer success story. Because right now in your situation, the last thing that you should be feeling is shame about who you are and how you're choosing to live your life. And you absolutely should not be comparing your situation to anybody else's, but instead, you should be learning how to celebrate right where you are. And you should be making peace with your personal timeline and trusting in your own evolutionary unfolding, which is actually what our strategy is all about. Diffusing the pressure surrounding your desire to come out of the closet and then learning how to be okay with exactly where you are. Okay, so let's get into that strategy, which is called trust in the unfolding of you. And recognize that your individual storyline is specific to you and only you, because your upbringing, your family, your brain chemistry, your past experiences, your resources, your strengths and weaknesses, all of these are elements of your unique origin story, which means that at the end of the day, these blanket statements and generic storylines aren't going to be nearly as relevant to your situation as they may seem. Even if all of that information is coming from a group of people who share lots of similarities with you, still, what's right for them doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be right for you. So instead of using this fairy tale queer success story as a way of demeaning your own progress, trust in the unfolding of you and recognize that there is a natural intelligence which is guiding you through an individual's timeline at a pace which is specific to you, which really isn't a process that you get to just rush or force, right? Just like how a flower opening its petals too soon would be in opposition to its natural evolution. So in the same way, your own evolution has to happen in accordance to what is best for you. So my suggestion with this strategy is to put your ears to the ground and see if you can sense those subtle currents of your life and tune into those quiet intuitive promptings and those secret messages from life. And then see if you can start placing the emphasis of your life on walking your individual path as opposed to comparing yourself to the generic one. And then more and more, see if you can start cultivating a sense of trust in yourself, trust in your intuition, trust in the divine timing of things, because you recognize that this is the unfolding of you. So this is a glorious masterpiece of art that only makes sense when it's seen in the proper context. And so this is the context of you, your individual life, your individual path. So this is your masterpiece. And then at some point in the future, when you're ready to come out and the timing is as it's supposed to be, and you've been sufficiently prepared, well, you're going to come out. But that really shouldn't happen as a result of shaming yourself for being in the closet. But instead, it should be a celebration for being okay with your situation. And it should be an outcome of making peace with what is. And then even if you never come out, like that's fine too, right? That's also a masterpiece which is specific to you. So please don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself, but instead just love yourself for being exactly who you are, where you are. And then from that place of acceptance and balance, move in a way that only you know how. And if you're wanting additional resources for navigating this closeted time in your life, then you should watch this video, because in it I share what I believe to be is the most important thing to consider before your coming out experience. All right, that's all I've got in this one. I will see you in the next one.